Hello there. My name is Richard Dolan, and I'm really happy to be bringing to you today a very esteemed guest on behalf of QuestCap. I'm joined by Stan Bharti, the chairman of QuestCap. My friend, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me, Richard. It's good to hear your voice.
Well, of course. These are different times. I mean, no thanks to this crisis, studios are finding themselves in homes. They're relegated to garages and kitchens and backyards. So it doesn't matter the medium. What matters is the message. So I'm really grateful that you made your way into this conference call right now. So good to see you. Now, for the purpose of this conversation, many people that are searching up who QuestCap is, what we're up to, and what it is that we're doing in the world to win this battle at hand with the crisis that has really, in fact, engulfed the entire world. From your perspective, and I mean from the very top from which you speak and from which you sit, tell me what inspired you to get behind this and why is it really important to you?
Okay, so before I do that, Richard, let me tell you about this pandemic because I have, one of those fortunate people that was born in India, lived and studied in Russia, lived in Europe, worked in Africa, now in Canada, in the US. We've been in 30 odd countries. We're in Brazil, we're in Chile, in Argentina. So I have a very international perspective. And first, I want to say my generation, which is really the baby boomers, this is the first real crisis we've seen. 2008, the financial crisis, yes, it hurt your pocket, but there was no fear. For the first time, I see fear. This is a true pandemic. So as people that have benefited tremendously over the last 40 years, I was born in the 50s, school in the 60s, universities, we wore the bell bottom pants, we wore the jeans, the long hair. Life was great. And then the 90s came, globalization opened the world up. I mean, the Berlin Wall fell in 1989 or 1991. The Soviet Union broke up. Then China opened up in 2002. And I've never seen such great opportunity. And no matter what we say about the world, never have so many people lived so well. The standard of living in poor countries in Africa, South America, India, China. So in this world, the pandemic is a shock. It's a shock of the system. So as people that have benefited from everything in the world, how do we make a difference?
Yeah.
And I think there are three key things that have to be done here. One, I think obviously we have to detect it. Two, we have to find a vaccine for it to stop it from coming in the future. And three, we have to find drugs that can cure people that unfortunately have it. So
now, before you go any further, I want to put a button in something because you covered so much. But what's amazing about time with you, first of all, I realize how much of a global citizen you are. That's just number one. Number two is you understand the importance and the opportunities at hand on a global scale, given the experience and the things that you've done worldwide. But number three, as a global citizen and a global investor, you also recognize that in this particular time, we have a pandemic that's gripping anywhere from 8-year-olds to 88-year-olds. It's the same for everyone across the board, and that concerns you, not just as a citizen, but also as an investor. And that's important. So to your point about the what is needed, the three prongs, is that where you formed your company? Is that where the catalyst for what you're doing was actually, in fact, genicized?
So, yeah, absolutely. So if you look at it, how do we get the world back to where we were? Go back 6 months ago, flying on the plane everywhere, meeting people, drinks, parties. How do we get the world back there? First, we have to be able to tell how and when we can get this and the kits for it. Two, we've got to find the vaccines, like I said, and three, the drugs. So our focus is on all three because that's the only way we're going to get back to normality, particularly in emerging markets. It's great. We're lucky. We're in Canada. People have their home, their apartments, they live well. But you go to Africa, you go to Brazil, you go to India, where this thing could spread like crazy. So as a humanitarian, as somebody that has got so much from the world to give back through the foundation's charities, that's what we want to focus on. And let me expand that a little more. I want to expand that by saying, first of all, when you look at the kits, obviously there is the molecular nasal kit that a lot of the hospitals are using. It takes 4 or 5 days to be cured. I understand that kit, they're difficult to get, they're expensive, and If you want to go to work, if you want to go to a movie theater, if you want to go watch a sports game, you can't wait 5 days. So we've invested in QuestGap in kits that are antibody blood kits. They are 80 to 90% accurate, but you get instant results. You either know you have it, you have the antibodies, or you've had it, or you haven't had it as yet. So either way, it gives you somewhere to deal with. If you have the antibodies, you wait 10, 12, 14 days, you still get the antibodies are there, you know that you've got over it. You may not have it. So that is the first thing we've done. There are kits available from China, from Korea. We announced that we've signed a big transaction with a Korean company to bring their kits and sign an exclusive deal in North and South America.
Well, I just want to make sure, again, I rewind this conversation a little bit for people to process at the speed that they should, given what it is that you've just said. When you talk about the three areas of focus, from zeroing in on the origination, the origin point of the virus, understanding and getting our heads wrapped around the vaccines that are necessary, and then the necessary drugs. Here's the thing. The ultimate delta, according to your research group and the relationships you've got with scientists and professors and immunologists, is we don't know. The ultimate delta is we just don't know when we'll get a vaccine. And the world cannot live quarantined forever. We can't be relegated to our homes forever. We got to get back to school. We have to get back to work. And those cultures, those communities, those centers of commerce that are even hardest hit, as you said, are the third world and developing countries who just simply cannot afford to stay home and self-quarantine. So when you talk about kits and self-testing, really what you're talking about is the single greatest act to restoring our realities back to as business as usual, getting back to commerce, getting back to community by self-testing, self-assessing, so to self-regulate, giving back people control of their lives. Does that all make about sense?
And let me give you a very good example. In the 80s, when I traveled, there was no security on an airplane. You walked to an airplane, you got your bags, off you went. In the 90s, we had the advent of the machines. Today, you cannot think of an airport where you don't have security. 9/11 further accelerated that. This is just one more layer. Unfortunately, we're going to have to add. And the kits, rapid testing of kits is the key here, because we want to get back to normality. At the same time, we want to know who has it, who doesn't. So these kits, you're absolutely right. You will see them at airports, you'll see them at baseball stadiums, you will see them on hockey stadiums, and slowly it'll become part of the norm.
Right.
And we'll see that even in personal relationships between people. Hey, you want to date me? Let's first check each other out. It's all going to be part of the norm.
But and you talk about a walk down memory lane. I mean, AIDS was an incredible pandemic when it first hit the whole world. I mean, we didn't know where it came from. We didn't know how you really caught it. We didn't know how you, in fact, spread it. And as a result, as we were in a state of fear and concern with the lack of knowledge, expertise, and insights, I mean, the world just ended up figuring, hey, how do we test ourselves so we know who's got it, who's positive, and how we can manage ourselves accordingly? So it sounds like a new reality. Regulate.
It is. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we had AIDS, we had Ebola, we had many other crises. This is the first one where people can walk around and unknowingly pass it on. That is scary. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm obviously not a doctor, but I can tell you one thing, that sometimes in the early stages of these pandemics, you really don't know what the causes are. And going back 700 years to the bubonic plague, one of the worst pandemics in the world, at that time, people thought it was your breathing. And they all wore masks and this and that, but really it came from rats and fleas. And the rats could carry the fleas, and the fleas would bite human beings. That's how you got the bubonic plague. So I'm sure our smart scientists in the world, in the next 2 to 3 months, we will find absolutely what is causing it, how many days it's asymptomatic, when does it become symptomatic. I mean, there's a lot of research going on. And let me give you some examples. So, the kits are important. It's the first line of defense, if you like. The second one is all the research that's going on and how exciting it is. We've now got into Sunnybrook. Sunnybrook has isolated the world's first gene for the COVID-19. It's huge, because if you're going to find a cure, if you're going to find a vaccine, you need to know the gene, the DNA footprint, if you like. So Sunnybrook has done it, and we've invested in Sunnybrook in the research.
And by the way, congratulations to you and the team. That was an incredible, sizable pledge that you made to Sunnybrook.
It's worth it because I think they've one of the top institutions in the world, and their research organization is great. So it's our pleasure to be part of it.
Now, what's important about the point you just made, aside from the fact that the first line of defense is the actual kits, the self-testing, self-assessing, therefore self-regulating, is the research area. One of the things that you've been able to, in fact, not only induce more of, but according to Dr. Samira Mubarak, I mean, is the influx of collaboration. Oftentimes, research areas, the immunologists, the scientists, and the thought leaders in these respective fields often stay in silos. But this is the very first pandemic that they're actually coming together as a result of the kind of work that you're doing, QuestCap is inducing, and that we're noticing right now. How important is private enterprise, given you sit at the helm of one of them, to lead by example, continue to pledge the financial bandwidth, so to induce the collaborations right now to really get the upper hand on the pandemic, my friend?
And Richard, the guru in this, of course, is Bill Gates. That man, I don't know the exact number, but he's given over $100 billion, I think, to all kinds. He would be by far the richest man in the world if he hadn't given away all that. He still is, but he'd be richer, if you like. So he's definitely the leader. Look at what we've done. We've invested in Harvard. They're doing some excellent research to identify potential vaccines and cures. This is not Harvard University, but it's people that went to Harvard and MIT. We've invested in Sunnybrook. There's three other deals we're looking at that we hope to announce soon that are also investments. So that will really accelerate the identification of the real issue, whether it's isolating the gene, how to treat it. For example, and I'm not a scientist, but let me explain to you in layman's terms what these ex-Harvard guys are doing.
Please.
They realize that COVID is, at the end, it's a flu. It's a crazy flu. It's a flu on steroids, but it's a flu. And we know we get vaccines every year for flus, but they're only 40, 50, 60% effective, because what that vaccine does is it looks at one gene or one type of influenza, if you like, or flu, and treats it. However, these flus mutate. So the COVID mutates. So what the Harvard guys have done is they've developed a system that they can deal with the different mutations in one drug, or they're developing one. It will be huge, not just for COVID, but for all kinds of flus. So it's very interesting, very exciting technology.
Well, and here's where the bottom line is, because I know you've got to get back to work. You're hitting the phones. You're talking to governments and official, professional sport teams. You're talking to different verticals and industries and sectors on how to really get an upper hand on this crisis. So I know you're up to some good work, and I'm so grateful for your time. But what's important to note right here is the fact that for anybody watching this video, the number one thing that leaves them very excited is that we don't have to get into the discovery game. We don't have to get into investing our time, our effort, our resources, and or our efforts to find and discover these brave human beings, these courageous souls, these brilliant minds who are looking for the vaccines, looking for the drugs, looking for the breakthroughs. We've got you. We've got you to work with. We've got you to, in fact, count on and say, hey, we're going to applaud you. We're going to champion Stan and his team to go out there and continue looking for, searching for, and securing the right conversations to really pave the way to a better, brighter, and hopefully one day a COVID-free existence.
And I can tell you, Richard, that the drugs are coming. We've already identified a very interesting drug in Cuba that was used in China. Now in the US and Cuba, obviously there's issues, but generally that drug was used in China very effectively. As you know, Mr. Trump's talked about hydrochloroquine, which all these drugs have obviously side effects, but they are the short-term answer. Long-term, I'm sure we find cures. And I want to end with one note. The world, I think, will never be the same, at least in my generation. Globalization and the openness we had will disappear for the next 5 to 10 years. People will be more insular. Countries will be more careful. You know, the whole spirit, unfortunately, I mean, you know, so in some ways, we're some of the luckiest in our generation that we had 40, 50 years of total free society. And now people will be more careful. And, you know, especially the young, Generation Z, that are going to be sitting in homes for 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. It's going to affect their psyche. It's going to affect the way they think. It's going to affect the way they interact with people. And hopefully it doesn't last too long, because the world is a great place to live. And, you know, and I've never seen such, until recently, such a great world where all the countries are developing, people are coming together. So
Well,
that's the passing thought.
Well, Stan Bharti, I got to tell you, it's as a result of the work that you're doing. It's as a result of the pledges that your firm has been making. And we want to say thank you, not just for the time that we have here and for the generations of today, but for hundreds of generations to come. I know that the work that QuestCap is doing today will be appreciated and celebrated for generations to come.
Thank you. It's very good to talk to you, Richard.
Wonderful. I've been joined by Stan Bharti, the chairman of QuestCap, the man who is leading the charge on all things COVID-19 to ensure that we are better equipping not just mankind, but the researchers, the scientists, and the professors behind finding our way back home to reality. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time.
Thank you.